Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today's video, start or sit wide receivers. We go through each and every matchup for Sunday and Monday in the NFL slate for week 5. Help you decide which players you should start, which players you should sit this week. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to follow us on Twitch at OwnersBox Sports. We're live at 11 a.m. every Sunday, helping you with your lineups and any final decisions in terms of injuries can help you win your weeks. And again, if you're new, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. Like the video as well. Comment down below. Happy to help and answer as many questions as possible there. But we're fresh off an absolutely atrocious Thursday night game. I think it's time for Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson to perhaps retire. So hopefully we'll get some better games here. It doesn't look great, at least for in London on Sunday morning. We get the Giants, Packers to start things off. The Giants very banged up, especially when we talk passing game. We got Daniel Jones, who looks to be ready to play on Sunday morning in London, but the receiver room incredibly banged up. Kadarius Toney in practice has now hurt his other hamstring. Perhaps one of the worst takes I've had in the entire preseason was Kadarius Toney being a guy to draft late in the draft. He is nowhere to be found. Who knows when that guy will ever touch the field. Wan'Dale Robinson still looking like he won't play. Kenny Golladay as well not practicing. Richie James is really that healthy option for the team. I would not be playing any of these guys against this Packers defense that's been tremendous in the pass rush, tremendous in coverage. Nobody on the Giants side that I want to touch this week on the road in London. Packers side of things, we still have Lazard nursing the injury. Honestly, the Giants, their pass coverage hasn't been fantastic by any means, 56.4 coverage grade. Thing is, they're second in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, and it's because of their pace of play. Things are very, very slow, especially when they're leading on the ground game. So in terms of your decisions here, you're probably looking at Allen Lazard and Romeo Doubs. I would go Lazard as the number one option. He is the guy they've looked to in the red zone predominantly here. He's the guy I'd play number one in this matchup, which is a pretty good matchup for the Packers offensively. I think they'll lean on the ground game as they've been doing all season. So I don't have a high upside on either one of these guys, but I would go Lazard over Doubs in week 5. All right, Browns, Chargers, getting things going in the 1 o'clock slate. I think this is a game that'll be relatively low scoring. Myles Garrett may be back and ready to play. That's a huge plus for the Browns in their pass rush, which has been relatively good this year. Him and Clowney, if they're back, can cause some problems for a Chargers pass pro that has not been good this year. Made the move, got rid of Storm Norton. As a Chargers fan, I'm very pumped about that. Jamari Salyer stepped in the left tackle spot and was very good. One of the best left tackles on the week last week, but they were chipping in on blocks with the tight ends, scheming things up to keep things away from him. That might be tougher to do in this matchup against a much improved pass rush. Joshua Palmer has been limited in practice. You're playing a guy like Mike Williams week in and week out. Palmer's a guy I'd probably lean against. I think the Browns' pass defense is better than what it's been so far this year. So I think this is low scoring. I think a lot of this comes down to the pass rush for the Browns if Myles Garrett's healthy. On the other side with the Browns offense, the Chargers have had a very good pass rush this year, but missing Joey Bosa. Really, it all comes down to him being a major part of their pass rush. So I think the Browns, going up against Asante Samuel, you got J.C. Jackson. Amari Cooper is someone I'm a little bit hesitant to play this week. I'd likely lean against it. The Chargers giving up huge chunk plays on the ground. We know what the Browns like to do on the ground with the football. I'd lean against playing most of these guys other than Mike Williams in this matchup. Let's go to Lions, Patriots, a game maybe not a lot of people will be looking to watch. Bailey Zappi is in at QB. Obviously, last week, the Patriots leaned completely on the run game, refused to throw the football at all. And Zappi is a guy that from college at Western Kentucky was throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. I do think that now with a full week of practice, they will throw the ball a bit more against a Lions defense that doesn't have a great pass rush, isn't great in coverage either. They're like one of the worst coverage units in the NFL. I think Jacoby Myers might be back this week. Ramondre Stevenson actually led the team in targets last week. So if Jacoby Myers is healthy, I think you could play him. I think Bailey Zappi will throw the ball plenty more, and Jacoby Myers, to me, is the clear number one option, regardless of rapport with Mac Jones. I think this is their top guy. So I would, if you're in a bind, if you're looking to play a guy like, hey, do I play Jacoby Myers or Romeo Doubs? I think I'd play Jacoby Myers this week. I actually think against the Lions defense, they'll have success. I'm going to be betting on the Patriots this week. The Lions defense has been really, really poor. They're banged up as well. the Amon-Ra St. Brown, we moved to the Lions side offensively, did not practice on Thursday. He practiced in a limited fashion on Friday. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to play. I'm not going to give, if he's healthy, we're playing him for sure, but it could be another Raymond game here. If you want to play him, if you did pick him up off the wire, I think you could still do so because I do like the Patriots front in terms of being able to stop the run, and Jamal Williams, who's been incredibly inefficient this season, but has produced from a fantasy perspective. So if Amon-Ra is available, I'm playing him. He'd be the only guy I'd play here in this matchup. But if he's out, you can play Raymond in this game against the Patriots. All right, Steelers, Bills. Bills, incredibly banged up. It just continues for them defensively. Jordan Poyer is now going to be out this week, missing another DB. This defense has been fantastic, but again, really banged up. And the Steelers, surprisingly, compared to previous seasons, I don't know what's changed here. Their pass pro has been really good, one of the best in the NFL. They're going up against a Bills defense that has been the best in the NFL in the pass rush. We've got Kenny Pickett making his debut as a starter. Of course, we saw him in a half last week. With the way the Bills are banged up, I don't think George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are bad plays this week. Do I think that they can be, top 15 options? No. Do I think they can be top 36 options? Yes. I think George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are players you can play in a game where the Steelers are massive underdogs. Massive. I know the Bills, third in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They've been really, really good against each and every opponent they've had, including the Rams, including the Ravens. But I do think Kenny Pickett gives this offense a chance to be much more explosive. And I know I really like the Bills scheme, but being down these options in the secondary makes it an opportunity where I think you could play these guys. Bills side of things, Isaiah McKenzie concussion. I would be really, really excited about him because Jamison Crowder's out as well. Gabe Davis is healthy and ready to go. He had a full practice in this week. So I think those are your two best options here. I don't want to add Khalil Shakur and play him from that slot role. I think just in a 1 week filler spot here where McKenzie's probably going to be out. And then we're looking at Shakir probably being back in that wide receiver 5 role next week. He's not someone worth, streaming here in this spot or them cooking up a lot in terms of the game plan that revolves around him. I know Gabe Davis has been busting consistently the last few weeks in this matchup where they're missing that slot role. Maybe Davis moves into the slot a little bit more. Maybe Diggs moves into the slot a little bit more, and that gives an opportunity. So those would be the two guys I'd be looking to play. I think you can play Gabe Davis this week, quite frankly. Dolphins, Jets. Dolphins secondary, worst in the NFL. Their coverage grade, 48.4. Pass rush is good, though, and the Jets are very banged up on the offensive line. So that is a major problem. The Jets pass blocking grade from PFF, 51.1. So can they protect well enough for Zach Wilson? Can Zach Wilson take advantage of a really poor Dolphins secondary? I actually think he can. Xavier Howard looking to be out, potentially Melvin Ingram not practicing. This is a Dolphins team that's down very bad when it comes to injuries. So Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson are guys I can definitely play this week. I know I mentioned, when we were talking about the Corey Davis edition, that the Dolphins love to blitz. I guarantee you they'll be blitzing here, considering that they're down some really good options, some talented options in the secondary and in the front four. So it's a problem with Zach Wilson in terms of being able to handle the blitz. I think that Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson are the more reliable targets here, and Davis being more of the deep option. I don't think Wilson has time to hit him. So I like those two guys as guys who can create plays after the catch, especially with a Dolphins secondary that, of course, undermanned in terms of injuries, but also if they're blitzing, less guys to make tackles in the secondary. There's some good opportunity for them there to make some big plays after the catch. Dolphins side of things, week in and week out, there's not much to get into with these guys. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are plays each and every week. Even with Teddy Bridgewater at QB, get into these guys' hands and let them make plays after the catch. I think that's something they'll be looking to do here against the Jets defense. All right, Falcons, Bucks. The Falcons have actually earned themselves a pretty nice coverage grade so far this year, but here is the big factor in why I would love to play any of these Bucs wide receivers. The Falcons pass rush grade, 58.6, one of the worst in the NFL. And the Bucs, the biggest reason why we haven't seen them make big plays offensively and be the team they were last season is because of the pass pro. The pass pro has not been good. We saw these season-ending injuries. We saw them lose guys in the offseason. Here is a great opportunity for Tom Brady to be much better protected against a pass rush that just doesn't have any talent to get after the quarterback. So Chris Godwin, limited in practice with a knee issue, which is a problem, right? The ACL, coming back from the ACL, that's a little scary. But I think if he's on the field, that means he's more than good enough to play in a matchup for the Bucs where we're looking at a Falcons team that I don't think has a chance in this game. So if he's on the field, I'm playing Godwin. 10 targets last week. This isn't a guy you can sit if he's healthy, especially in this matchup. Mike Evans were firing away. If Julio Jones, who's limited in practice, is available, he's someone you could play. Because if Godwin is playing, I think it's not a limited snap count, but there might be some times he's off the field. And when he's on the field, he'll get a high target rate. Julio's an option for me. If any of those two miss, Russell Gage is someone you can definitely play as well. So I love the Bucs. I love what they can do throwing the football against the Falcons this week. Falcons side of things, there's really only one guy. It's Drake London, especially with Kyle Pitts out. This is a very difficult matchup. So traditionally, if both Pitts and London were available, I'd probably be telling you to sit Drake London this week because the Buccaneers pass defense is the most talented group in the entire NFL. But Drake London's the only option for Marcus Mariota here. So I do think that with that being the case, his target volume will be high. So I think you can still play him in this matchup because there might be 6-7 receptions. You might end up with 40-50 yards. But if he can give you that floor, that's something you could probably live with as opposed to some other options on your bench this week. All right, Seahawks, Saints. Seahawks team that took advantage of a very, very poor Lions defense last week. Tyler Lockett hit our receiving total, which was fantastic. Hitting that prop over at BetFred, that was awesome. But weren't able to take it home completely with both of the plays. But we go to the Seahawks here in a much more difficult matchup. The Saints defense, though, hasn't generated a lot of push on the defensive line. They haven't really been able to get after the QB. That's good for Geno Smith, who's dealt with a lot of pressure so far this season. But this is a Saints defense that's really good in coverage. Tyler Lockett, the receiving volume is really high for him. The target volume has been really high. I think both of these guys, despite the difficult matchup, the Saints are very banged up. I would be playing both of these guys just because of how often they're looked to. Rashad Penny was actually missing in practice this week as well, so could be leaning on the pass a fair bit in this matchup. And with the way these two are playing, you got to ride them even against a tougher opponent as opposed to the Lions. But the Saints have been banged up, so I'm definitely still looking to play these guys. Saints side of things, Michael Thomas, the toe injury. I can't believe this toe injury is going to keep Michael Thomas out another week, but that absolutely looks like the case. Jarvis Landry limited in practice. Chris Olave in a matchup against the Seahawks defense, which has a 41.3 coverage grade. An absolute fire away here. The Saints have been great in pass pro too. You thought the loss of Teron Armstead would have a big impact, but they've been one of the best in pass pro. So Chris Olave is a big, big play this week. You're seeing the volume here. He can hit some explosive plays against a Seahawks defense that's 32nd in passing DVOA. So a great matchup here. Texans Jaguars, a game that not going to probably get a lot of eyeballs from any of us. It'll be there on Red Zone. Maybe it'll pop up. On the Jaguars side, the Texans coverage grade and coverage unit has been good. I've talked about it. The Derek Stingley addition has been great for them. They've been much better defensively. I know they haven't come away with a win yet this year, but Christian Kirk is someone I'm still looking to play in a plus matchup. Got to avoid Derek Stingley, but at the same time, does Stingley come into the slot where Kirk is running his routes and play there exclusively? I highly doubt it. So Kirk is a guy that can avoid those CB1s because of where he is on the field. So don't be too worried about that matchup. I don't think it happens as often as one would typically think if he was on the outside. Then I'd be a little bit more worried. Then we get to that's pretty much everything I would do on the Jaguars front. Zay Jones has been battling injury. And like I said, Stingley is a guy on the outside that'll make it much more difficult for these other guys in this matchup. Texans side of things, I really respect the Jaguars defense. Pass rush has been great, 7th in passing DVOA, but they are 20th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Brandon Cooks is a guy I would play, but Nico Collins he isn't getting enough target volume. He's hitting a few big plays, but he's getting 3 or 4 targets a game, and that's not enough for me in a matchup against the Jaguars defense that I do like. So I would be looking to play Brandon Cooks, but I'm not looking to go to Nico Collins in this matchup. Titans, Commanders. We got a Titans team banged up at the receiver room. I'm looking at Treylon Burks and thinking he doesn't play here. It pretty much, to me, I know it's a good Commanders or a good matchup against the Commanders, who are 31st in points allowed to wide receivers. But my problem is I just don't see enough here from this, receiver room to be able to trust anyone. I think Robert Woods, if you do have him, I would play him this week, to be honest with you, because that is probably the most clear, defined option in this offense, especially if Treylon Burks is out. So I would play Robert Woods here. This is the type of guy that if you have on your team, then when else would you be playing him? If you're not playing him against the Commanders, you're never going to play him this entire season. So I definitely would play Robert Woods, especially with Treylon Burks, looking like he's probably going to be out. Commanders side of things. We're looking at Jahan Dotson, who's dealing with a hamstring injury and expected to miss a couple weeks. He's been limited in practice, but I don't think that means he has any chance to play this week. So I do really like Curtis Samuel, who is dealing with an illness. He's been sick and away from practice, but I think with a few days before the game, he will be available to play. If he is, an absolute smash play for sure against the Titans defense that has not been good against wide receivers. 29th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They have a great pass rush, one of the best pass rushes in the NFL so far this year. I know Carson Wentz, and you think about the 9-sack game a couple weeks ago, but at the same time, a lot of that, like I mentioned in the previous video last week, was responsibility that fell on him. The pass protection has been solid, so I do like Curtis Samuel in this matchup. Again, another spot here where the ball's going to be coming out quickly with this pass rush like it was against the Cowboys, and Samuel has the chance to get the ball and make plays after the catch. But I would still be playing Terry McLaurin here, like I mentioned about the Titans. In terms of their coverage grade, hasn't been good. So I think McLaurin, we had him as a must-sit last week. He does bounce back this week. All right, Bears, Vikings is up next. We've got a Bears team who hasn't been able to get after the passer whatsoever. And their coverage grade, not great, but 4th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. But it comes down to the fact that they are running the ball on 65% of plays. That does not give the opposing offense a lot of opportunities and a lot of plays themselves. And as well, against a Bears team that is not very good, they're going to be leading in this game and don't need to throw the ball as much. That doesn't mean we're not going to play Justin Jefferson, but it does mean to me, again, we're going back to their 4th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Jalen Johnson might be out, so it makes it even better here for Justin Jefferson. But with a small amount of plays, potentially for the Vikings in the pass game, I'm leaning towards sitting Adam Thielen here in this game just because I think the Vikings won't need to throw the ball too much here against this Bears team, and it'll be one in a division matchup. Tends to be low scoring. I'm always mentioning that. There just might not be the chance for what Thielen needs to typically perform is those touchdowns. So I'm leaning against playing Adam Thielen this week against the Bears. But on the Bears side, we don't really have to talk about this too much. There's just no way I'm playing a single guy on this team for the foreseeable future. They're almost a team you don't even need to discuss. It doesn't matter the opponent. They have the Commanders next week. Maybe I can sell myself if I see Justin Fields being a little bit better or a little bit more high volume in the pass game. Maybe I could sell myself on playing a Darnell Mooney against the Commanders next week, but I'm not doing it against the Vikings this week, who have a great pass rush, but they do have some weaknesses in the secondary. So maybe if you took a flyer on one of these guys on OwnersBox in our DFS contests, I could see it for cheap, but otherwise not in a season-long matchup. Panthers, 49ers. The 49ers are the best defense in the NFL. I don't even think it's a discussion. The one thing that I keep an eye on is Arik Armstead and Javon Kinlaw likely being out. They forced those guys to come back in a big game against the Rams last week, but both of them couldn't stick around. So I think they'll both be out. So it does help Baker Mayfield and giving him some more time to be able to work with the passing game. But that doesn't mean I'm playing DJ Moore. I'm definitely sitting DJ Moore. The 49ers have a 90.4 coverage grade, 76.5 pass rush grade, 4th in DVOA, 6th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. I just don't see any reason to play this guy in this matchup. This is a very good 49ers defense. It's fantastic. So I'm definitely looking to sit DJ Moore here in this game. From the 49ers side of things, Brandon Ayuk to me is a weekly play as long as Elijah Mitchell is out. I definitely wouldn't be looking to sit him against this Panthers defense that has been pretty decent in coverage, but I do think that Debo's very involved in the run game as well, so it does leave Ayuk a lot of times as that number one receiving option. So I would be trying to play Ayuk in most matchups. It's not someone I'm incredibly high on in a game against the Panthers defense. I do think is pretty decent, middle of the road, I would say, in the NFL. But if you're looking at some way deep options, I lean towards Ayuk here. Just with the way things are with Elijah Mitchell out, it definitely helps Ayuk, and I do think his rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo is very solid. Cowboys, Rams. This one's another very interesting matchup that I'll probably be. I know Cooper Rush is still going to be the QB here. I could still be seeing myself backing the Cowboys in this game. The Rams pass pro has been terrible. It is actually now. Last week it was the Chargers with the worst grade. The Rams now have the worst grade. They're really feeling it here in some losses that they've had in the offensive line. The Cowboys, the best pass rush in the NFL, and their coverage has been good too. Like I've dogged Trayvon Diggs at times, especially last year. He's bounced back really well this year, and their entire defense has been great. So this is a tough matchup for the Rams offense. I'm definitely not looking to play an Allen Robinson. I'm not looking to play a Ben Skronik. Tyler Higbee with his target volume could be someone you go to. I think if you're at the tight end position, unless you've got some, you're a guy that drafted multiple tight ends, Higbee and his target volume is hard to ignore. So the only guy I'm looking to play in this matchup against the Cowboys, though, from the Rams side, would be Cooper Kupp. Cowboys offense now. CeeDee Lamb missed practice. He basically said it's not a problem. He said something about the too many miles on the GPS or something like that, and they sat him and he didn't practice at all. He says it's not a problem, so expect him to be playing. Expect it to be a guy you can start. The Rams defense, 30th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So it makes this, can we go to a guy like Michael Gallup? I'm just not sold on doing something like that, him or Noah Brown. Dalton Schultz looks like he's going to be good to play. I wouldn't play these guys as good of a matchup as it is from like that fantasy points allowed perspective, just because I see Gallup as someone who's easing his way in. Lamb's getting a lot of volume. Brown's had a good rapport. So even in a good matchup, I do think, against a Rams defense that's great against the run, so they will need to lean on the pass. I think Gallup is someone I'd probably try to avoid playing, but in terms of ranking of the three of him and Brown and Lamb, I'd go Gallup and then Brown. But Gallup will kind of need that touchdown again to be able to return his value to you in your starting lineups. All right, Cardinals and Eagles. An Eagles team that's rolling here, the only undefeated team left on the season. They go up against the Cardinals defense that grades out absolutely horribly defensively, 28th in DVOA, a coverage grade of 31.5. That's definitely the worst in the NFL, not getting it done. So the Eagles pass catchers are definitely a full go here. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, good matchup, absolutely firing away on these guys against the Cardinals defense. Cardinals side of things, it's a matchup against the Eagles defense that has been very good in terms of being able to get after the passer and make plays from that perspective. But the Cardinals have been respectable in pass pro, so hopefully they can hold up here. But against this Eagles defense that's second in passing DVOA, I'm only looking at a guy like Marquise Brown, who's had some of the best volume in the entire NFL in terms of target and receptions. Otherwise, your Greg Dortch, your Rondale Moore. I'm looking to avoid, it may be in a spot where this Cardinals pass protection would be completely overmatched. Maybe I could play Rondale Moore, but I don't think this is the right game to do so. This is going to be a tough one for the Cardinals, who have really struggled, especially in the first half, to be able to score points and put the ball in the end zone. So for the foreseeable future, I'm only looking to play Marquise Brown on this Cardinals team, and then, of course, Zach Ertz. All right, Bengals-Ravens. As we get into this is our Sunday nighter, isn't it? Yeah, our Sunday nighter, Bengals-Ravens. We're getting into, or this would be the, is this the Sunday nighter or is this the final game in the, yeah, this is our Sunday nighter. So Bengals-Ravens, the Bengals have been, continue to be pretty poor in terms of pass pro, but, usually not a problem for Joe Burrow. They're starting to get things going. And the Ravens, the worst team in the NFL in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. I think, their coverage grade and their pass rush, it doesn't mirror where they are in terms of fantasy points allowed. They've allowed some explosive plays, some broken down plays. I'm definitely playing Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in this matchup. Divisional game, though, I always talk about this, tends to be lower scoring. But So from that side of things, I'm not looking to go to the third option in terms of Tyler Boyd as someone to start. I do think the Ravens will come back down to earth a little bit in terms of how bad they've been with those fantasy points allowed. So those two guys would be the guys I'd be looking to play. Ravens, man, it would have been a good time to sell high on Rashad Bateman a few weeks ago. The volume just isn't to a high enough degree to make him a guy you slot in each and every week. The Bengals defense, 7th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 8th in passing DVOA. They've got that ability to put a cap on opposing defenses with their coverage and having those numbers in coverage. So I think Rashad Bateman's a tough player to play in this matchup. I think it's someone I'm trying to sit, quite frankly, until I get a better matchup for him. These are two teams that are very familiar with each other, of course. So pretty much nobody I want to go to for the Ravens in this game against the Bengals. If Rashad Bateman you really need to, perhaps you'll have to do it, but I would lean against it as often as I can. All right, Chiefs, Raiders, another two teams very familiar with each other. But we got the Chiefs defense that's been pretty good this year, but 23rd in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. The Raiders, I think, they find in these two games that these two teams match up, there's always the one game the Raiders, keep up or are really explosive offensively and find ways to put points on the board. But new coach, Josh McDaniels, this team's been like Jekyll and Hyde in the first half and second half, have never put together a full 4 quarters of really good football offensively. Chiefs team, of course, they're familiar with. I am looking to, of course, play Devontae Adams. Beyond that, though, if Mac Hollins, if Hunter Renfro's ready to be back, I'm not totally sold on playing those guys. We saw Josh Jacobs' volume last week, and he was very good with that volume. He had like 30 touches. Could be something to lean to him again in this Chiefs matchup. Trying to keep things tight, trying to keep the ball away from the Chiefs offense. On the Chiefs side of things, the Raiders defense, very mediocre. I've always touched on the fact that I don't love the Raiders secondary. They don't have a lot of talent there. So Juju is definitely someone I'm looking to play. I think you can play Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but the Mecole Hardman side of things, it looks like Sky Moore's kind of stepping in and getting a little bit more runway here. So it does have an impact on a few of these guys, Valdes-Scantling and Mecole Hardman specifically. So I think it could keep away from those other 3 guys having big games. Like, I'm not looking to play Sky Moore, but it's something you're certainly going to have to monitor. And Travis Kelce's just an absolute monster in this offense and is the guy that Mahomes is looking to, play in and play out. So those would be the 2. I'd try to play those 2. I think you can play Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He leads the team in routes run on the season at the wide receiver position. So it doesn't seem like Sky Moore's taking him off the field much, but the Hardman side of things is the problem. So Valdes-Scantling in a pinch, but Juju and Travis Kelce are definitely guys I would go to. All right, that's each and every game for week 5 of the NFL season. Again, we're on Twitch at 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Go check us out there, OwnersBox Sports, and go check out our friends over at BetFred. Bet 50, get 250. If you are betting on these games, we touched on a few games I like from a betting perspective. Some of the players I like, you can target their receiving yards, target some of their props. So go look to do that over at BetFred. That link is down below in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.